It's The Perfect Union, the perfect podcast for the perfect country, brought to you by your perfect host, Hank Thompson, for you, the perfect listener. Hello, everybody. Perfect Union is the politics wing of Winners and Losers Enterprises and Apocalypse training courses. Don't forget to sign up for our upcoming class, Apocalypse Joke. Shit, I just read my note. Grief. How to deal with ceaseless existential pain caused by past and ongoing traumas without revealing weakness to the leader, rivals, or potential sexual partners. You guys can sign up down by the cafeteria. Just walk past the room where the screaming... this is the part where I'm improvising and blowing it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hello. Welcome back. Another one of my trademark returns to podcasting. I have really got it in my head that people give a shit if I do the show or not. I give a shit, and that's all that matters. So I'm doing it. Every time I do it, I'm like, I'm going to do it for real now. Every day. I'm like, that's a lot. Every twice a week. That's probably doable. And then I don't do it twice, But, it's okay. I've been super busy. Coming up, we're talking about Michael Brooks. I knew him. Going to share a few thoughts on that and a little bit about cancel culture. Motherfucker. And then about an old lady who's working. She's finally yanking on her bootstraps. So some good news later on. This will be a weird episode. Of course, the opening ramble, which I've thought of calling the pre-ramble, to maintain my motif of Constitution jokes. Maybe someday. Well, it's something to aspire to. So welcome to the show, everybody. If any listeners are tuning in for the first time, tuning in. I like that, makes me picture people like winding dials. Old radio equipment, though, the dials they felt cool. They had a really cool mechanical or like smoothness even. Those old dials feel good, not like the plastic crap that we all drive around with in our Toyota Camrys, right? So anyway, welcome Kyle Thiermann listeners, viewers, anybody who put up with my bullshit on his podcast. Thank you for finding me on iTunes, Twitter, Stitcher, Witter, fucking Wix, Webflow. I wanted to clarify something real quick in his intro of our episode. I've already actually put that. I almost said broadcast. I've already put his him and my conversation on my feed here and on my channel, but he's got a way bigger audience than I do because he tries. But he had said I became the head of publishing at the Young Turks. That's true. That was my job title about 6 years ago when I was the quote unquote head of publishing. But it wasn't like I filled that role because there was no role. It wasn't that formal. You got to kind of make up your own title. I was in charge of training others on how to do publishing. I did a little bit of that. I covered for other people. I did primary publishing for the main show. And I had 2 YouTube certifications, one in audience growth and development and digital rights management that I flew to New York for, stayed in a hotel in Chelsea on the company dime, and took a test at the YouTube place over at New York. But I went and hung out with some stand-up buddies and tried to do what stand-ups do, which is get rejected by women. Because, okay. Anyway, that was my one and only trip to New York. Maybe I'll ramble about that some other day. So I just didn't want people to think that I'm still at TYT at all. I came back to work for them and as a second round, and I did some freelance stuff in between, but I came back as a video editor full time. So because the publishing is a nightmare. Doing that work is awful. It is just clickbait. You're just trying to manipulate people. Not that they say, "Hey, go manipulate people," but it's just really intense, heavily cognitive. I think, or it's like you're really got to focus and then there's like you don't know what you're doing. It's just like you're trying to cast wizard spells via YouTube headlines and also SEO and all their shit. So anyway, just want to clarify that. That's one of the parts I struggle with this show too, is like I should break this into several episodes or several parts and post them on YouTube, but then I got to do fucking clickbait for those titles. And it just kills me to do that. I really would love to be able to keep this simple. I've been doing a little animation stuff, and I might end up doing that though, just to break it up. But I'm going to try to keep it simple and not straightforward. Kyle Thiermann does really good titles. As a former professional clickbait writer, I always looked at his and was like, he's just real clear. He doesn't waste words. He uses the space effectively, and that's one of the reasons he's successful. Plus, he's worked his ass off. All right, that's that. So, quarantine's happening still. We're all still dying in massive numbers because our government They're not incompetent. This is not what I was planning on rambling about, but it's not like incompetence would imply that they cared, that they were trying, but just kind of sucked at it. Like when your dad tries to fix a car, he's not, a part of a car he's not real sure about. Oh, the alternator. All right, go get my wrench. And then you have a funeral, whoops. But that's incompetence. This is not incompetence. It might be incompetence in achieving their goals, but they're fulfilling their mission of denying Americans any sense that their government should be on their side and that their government should offer material benefit to their lives and to make the world better on purpose. I don't know. It's horrifying. This is a crime against humanity. This is one of the worst things that a human population has ever, well, putting Trump in for sure, but the conservatism that's rampant in America from the founding of the country. I mean, all sorts of pathologies are weaving in and out of each other in what's going on now. And I hope this is a stressful period. I mean, I hope this stressful period leads to change and makes the world better on the other side of it. But there's a very good chance that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better at all. And by that time, climate change will have wrecked the planet, and there'll be food shortages, and that's when you're going to see some serious screaming and yelling. People are angry at each other because they're coughing deadly diseases into each other's faces. And you should be angry about that. People here in LA, I got to say, I honestly, I don't go out a ton, but most people, the vast majority, wear masks, and I'm grateful to live in an area where that's the case. Although I'm living near a ton of people, which also, California is all fucked up. So, wow, what a scary, weird, strange experience. I think everybody's stress load's a little elevated, if not substantially. I don't have children. I'm okay on money for a while, meaning like I don't have to go out and do Postmates or gig work, but maybe in a few months, hopefully if I can work on this podcast and maybe build up some stuff. And speaking of that, just real quick, stay safe, be careful, wash your hands, and vote. And you got to do more than vote, but you got to fucking vote. It has to be a landslide. The Republicans will cheat and steal. And even in a landslide, this is a very, 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 what's happening in Portland and just yesterday in New York, where plainclothes, what we think are police, and it turns out they were, grabbed somebody and threw them into an unmarked van and sped off. That they're dry running a military takeover of the country. Oh, Hank, that sounds extreme. Yeah, it's fucking extreme. They're willing to do it. Especially the worst possible person on the planet, Trump and his cronies. Whatever. Okay. I'm sure it'll come up again. I have been busting my butt on my woodworking project, which you've heard me talk about, Bum Rush Industries on Instagram, and now it's on YouTube. So I finally posted a couple videos, and I would be grateful if you went and watched it. I've been working on this thing for about 9 months, and I'll put a link in the description. Subscribe. If you're not a YouTube subscriber and you don't give a shit, click on the subscribe button. It helps me. It's actually, it literally, if I get to 100 subscribers, I think I'm at 16. But if you get to 100, you can pick a name for your channel. So it doesn't have to be UC445782, capital B, capital Z, lowercase b, Z. I like when people say Z. First time I heard that, I was like, whoa, other countries are weird. It's like that version when you see like a mailbox that's red or something. Like, oh my God. So, subscribe, smash that like button. No, but please go watch it. I put a ton of effort into it. You get to hear my voice. You get to see some of my editing. You get to see my apartment a little bit. Just those little slices in my hands. And a little humor and some good woodworking tips. Plus a little safety lecture from Uncle Hank. Okay? I want to be a dad. I want to be like a dad, but only in the part where you like teach people stuff. I like explaining things. I like showing someone like, hey, this is how this works. Do you understand it? No? Well, go fuck yourself. Get it the fuck out of here. Piece of shit. Child of mine. No. I don't. But anyway, that's a part of like parenting. Like I would like to have like an attentive 16-year-old child, and I could be like, look, I'm going to teach you how to drive. I'll fast forward you to some wisdom that I've learned the hard way, and you'll be safer, and the world will be safer because of Uncle Hank's tutelage. All right. Anyway, it is part. I do realize like it is fun. I like that, and I have this impulse to do tutorials for like Premiere or Photoshop, like the shape tool. I do a lot of drawing with the shape tool. If you've seen some of my time lapse drawings and stuff, I don't know. I just think I could explain stuff in an interesting way. Not that the world needs more jagoffs doing tutorials. That's not. Why would I say that? People who do tutorials are sweethearts. They're out there helping. You know, we all look up shit on YouTube when we're out of eye shot of the client, right? Isn't that a good feeling when you walk in and your plumber's watching a YouTube video? Oh, get out of here, Reggie. Take your pipe clamp and go. I don't, that's not happening. Although the guy that does the work in our building is not a plumber, not a worker. I mean, he knows his way around it, but whenever he comes by to fix my sink because it leaks, and I'm like, oh, I'll see you in a few weeks because this thing is going to leak again. You know, there's just, I don't make not leaking money yet. Like, I'm not like Jeff Bezos. Okay? His one bathroom with its one dirty ass sink covered in not sewage. Well, I guess it's not sewage yet. It becomes sewage once it goes down the drain, right? Covered in toothpaste grime. Okay, I washed it off. By the way, I did a deep clean on my bathroom yesterday because my depression was starting to flare up, and I was like, "Fuck, I gotta keep." If I lean into my depression and it's starting to feel it, and I've been feeling it in the last week or so. Oh, no good, no bueno. It's I just feel it's like in Ghost when the monsters, the ghosts, shadow monsters come grab the guy and pull him in. I'm just like, that's like depression, but they're green, so it's horrifying. It's really terrible. I hate it. So fucking tired of it. All right, well, so Bum Rush Industries in the thing. I'm working on a website, and maybe someday you'll be able to buy some stuff from me. That's weird. I'm honestly dreading having to figure out shipping. I feel like that's going to be a nightmare, particularly since they're trying to destroy the post office. Because what functioning society would provide a working mail system? Hello? The 1900s called. They want their communication technology back. They had ponies, and they made it work. But it's because it's an ideological threat to the Republican Party, and they don't want any kind of government to function well. And the post office serves as a symbol and a literal daily function of a good government. People like their mailman or woman. People like their mail dog. We should do mail dogs. Little cute dogs coming by. Roo, 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 roo. Well, I wouldn't want barking ones. I want them to be quiet as shit. Be scared when you walk out the door. See the dog standing there sorting mail, putting mail away. I would be willing to live with dog slobber if we had dog mailmen and women. Male dogs, I guess. Are people sexist about dogs? This is not none of this I had. Okay. How do you shift gears to this? Last week was hard. Today is June 20th or July 29th, Wednesday. So it was a Monday of last week. Michael Brooks died. He was a host of the Michael Brooks Show, and a co-host on the Majority Report, which is a show I usually watch and enjoy greatly. It's been something I've been paying attention to since the mid-2000s or so, whenever early in the progressive talk show sphere, when it was just the Young Turks and it was Tom Hartman, yes, King, when it was Majority Report, Chuck D, Liz Winstead, and Rachel Maddow had a show on Air America, all those old shows. I don't remember when Majority Report exactly came about, but they've been around a long time. And in the last several years, and I would say thanks to Michael, but also Sam and the rest of the crew, Jamie, Matt, and them, are all great at their jobs, and I really appreciate their perspective and their thoroughness and their thoughtfulness and the way that they interact with their audience. And if I ever had my shit together, I would be extremely grateful to be named in a similar, a list of other shows that were regarded anywhere near with what they do. I think the Majority Report's a great show, and Michael has been a huge part of that. For those of you that don't know, I imagine most of you listening to this have heard of the Majority Report. If you haven't, go check it out. Great politics and really good, funny analysis and stuff. And So it's been a daily part of my diet for a long time. Certainly just overtaking the Young Turks, even when I was working there the last few years, as what I gave a shit about. And I haven't watched Young Turks since I got laid off. It's still a little raw. No, I just, you'll understand when I tell that bigger story. Man. Wow. Okay. And so Michael came around as a co-host. If you're, I don't know, I didn't really plan much of this out here. But I know him personally, not well, but when I was working at Jimmy Dore Show, Michael was a guest, so I met him in person back in 2016. And at the time, I knew who he was. Like I said, I was watching the show, and I was curious to meet him because he obviously knew what he was doing, like talking about. He was a capable broadcaster, but I was a little, I would use the word sus, but it's called suspect. But I don't like that word either. So I wasn't it's suspicious. But as a stand-up comedian, you kind of have a little bit of I wouldn't say chip on your shoulder, but you don't hand out the funny compliment that readily. It means that word means something to you. Like a chef wouldn't say, needs salt. No, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. So Michael would do like impressions, and one of them was Trump. And a Trump impression in 2015, 2016 was kind of, he did a good one, of the range of Trump impressions. But I'm not going to like judge the guy wholly and completely because he isn't a comedian, although he definitely could have been one. But that was kind of my mindset. It was like, okay, that's Trump guy. Like, all right, no, but if, we meet him and he's cool and he does his Jimmy show, and he and Jimmy have had a falling out. Or they've had their back and forths, and it's clear which. Not that I'm picking sides either. Anyway, But as we were leaving, we ended the show that day. He was calling up an Uber or something, and. But I liked him. Like he was good on the show. He was cool in person. He was personable and nice. And over the years, just to wrap up the Trump thing, because that's really not that much. It's more. I'm trying to reveal something about my psychology more than his in this. That's why I'm bringing that up. He proved himself to be every bit as capable and funny as anyone I've ever known, including on top of his amazing breadth of knowledge and ability to recall, and his intelligence and his ability to speak just as a broadcaster, just a talented person, a good voice, and a good guy. So anyway, we were leaving Jimmy's house, and I had to drive across LA at 4 p.m, which is a nightmare commute. Luckily it was winter, or like November, so I didn't need, like the summer driving that ride would be terrible for my son. I didn't have air conditioning in my car, so my son would be out in the sun all day, and then I'd have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half. Anyway, I was like, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "Oh, so I was like, oh, come on, I'll give you a ride. It's fine. I mean, everything's on my way. We're going that way, right? All right." So I gave him a ride to his sister's house, and it was cool to talk to him. And I remember being very flattered that he was surprised at how many jobs I was doing. He was like, "You're funny." He goes, "But you're doing all that. I didn't know you did everything else." I was like, "Yeah, I'm on the air, but I'm also like writing headlines and doing sound and running the engineering and doing the sound and the audio. Those are the same things, sound and video and everything. And so it was a hell of a lot of work. So I was very flattered at that. And we stayed in touch on Twitter a little bit. He would go on the Young Turks and we would chat occasionally. And then we'd been in, I proposed maybe doing some animations for his channel. Actually, I'm going to share one of those. Well, all right, let's do it right now. I had made this thing. I don't remember why I drew. Here it is, Rand Paul. It's a great drawing for those of you that are just listening to the audio. It's a cool cartoon looking thing. Even if you look closely, he's got an Ayn Rand lapel pin. His suit has short sleeves, which is a humorous concept, although not original. And his tie is the cover of the Fountainhead. And there's also a gun in his pocket. So anyway, I like this style of drawing. I would like to I should draw other characters and faces. I think they'd look cool on a t-shirt or something. And he did a Rand Paul impression too, as part of his thing, and he would just jump in. One of the reasons why his impressions were so effective, and I also would name Jimmy Dore's guy, Mike McRae, a really talented, incredibly talented and accurate. His Harrison Ford impression, he does like a George Clooney. You're like, I think that's George Clooney. Why is George Clooney saying that crazy stuff? Mike McRae is also capable, as is Michael Brooks, of improvising in the voice of the character, and that's a rarer skill for impressionists. It's one reason why Michael's success was so, or why he was so respected for that as well. I also, God, it sucks. It just sucks. So we're going to talk about how he died too a little bit. I talked to my brother about the science of blood clots. My brother's a neuroscience professor, so not that he's a medical doctor, but he does know how blood and brains work together. So this is Michael's voice you'll hear. I took this audio. I did this as a spec. I'd sent this to him. He was receptive of it. The guy was always super busy, so I didn't bother him too much online. We'd even actually talked about maybe me coming on his show as a guest. I've done stand-up with, I did stand-up once at a Jimmy Dore hosted show, but Dave Rubin was also on that show. So I was going to tell the story of doing stand-up on a Dave Rubin show, because it, of course, went in a very weird Dave Rubin kind of way. So that story, I was really excited to tell him that story particularly. For those that don't know, Dave Rubin was a foil and I don't know what you'd say, a pommel horse for Michael Brooks's comedic output. I just finished reading Michael's book too, Against the Web. Of course, I read it on my Kindle via the evil empire of Amazon, but I should have bought it. But and Dave Rubin is mentioned in that, or talked about in that, as is some of the other dark web, those intellectual dark webbies, those guys that pretend to have it all figured out and try to explain to their audiences why the world needs to stay the same. My people like me are having a hard time. It's not fair being a successful for spouting misogynist bullshit. Clean your room, make your bed, Zed. So Michael Brooks, that's Jordan Peterson, by the way. Did this? They'd made so many videos, but there was this one where it was shortly after Rand Paul got his neighbor beat him up and broke a rib. I don't know. So there's some lawnmower joke here to make. I'm just gonna play it. I don't know how much. Actually, it's very short, but in the quality animation is not stellar, to be honest. The drawing is much better than the animation, so I use Character Animator for this. But this is Michael Brooks' voice doing Rand Paul. Let's just play it, and we'll play it.
I got back to Washington in order to vet for the big tax cut, but I wish we could have done more to make children hungry. It's in the Constitution. And now I'm back here in a lawnmower having like practically PTSD.
Okay. That was it. That's very short. That opens with Matt Leck saying like, and no, Michael, or no, I don't know. But this was more of a produced thing that they made. So that's why I chose that audio. That's why you could hear like a lawnmower sound behind them. But anyway, last Monday, so I was after meeting Michael, and eventually after that, at some point I went to work back at the Young Turks, and but before I went back to work at the Young Turks, he'd started the Michael Brooks show, and I was a patron of his, or still am, and was glad to do so, even at the $8 level. The motherfucker had the gumption to charge $8 for the lowest rate. You're supposed to charge $5, maybe $2, maybe even a $1. But I listened to his show. I'd never missed it, and I just appreciated his analysis, the guests he would get on, the depth and quality of his analysis, and as everybody points out, how he opened your I like to think of it as like lenses on a microscope or something, like, that little thing that spins around. Like, he added some lenses that we could all use to look at socialism and look at capitalism and look at all this stuff, democracy and these movements throughout history and throughout the globe, because they're all connected. They're all, threads that cross oceans, and Michael really did a great service. And I've been listening to some of the memorial shows for him. I didn't know him as well as most did at all, so It's just, but I've been listening to a lot of the memorial services for him, and everybody keeps saying how kind and funny and smart, and they love the global perspective that he introduced so many of us to. Because especially in America, you get so bogged down in the kind of stupidity wall that surrounds this country. We're all sort of just captives behind this moat of insanity that we live here. This white supremacist nightmare landscape. This, capitalism and slavery all evolving as this super beast that to control people and to keep you tired and busy and too exhausted to rebel and revolt. Wow. Okay. Where the hell was I talking about that? Oh, so his show was great, man. It was good, and it had been building, and I was actually looking at it as inspiration for my show, for building an audience, for having a Patreon community. I never did anything anywhere near the level of professionalism that he offered. I hope to. I aspire to be like Michael Brooks, but I did see it as inspiration and say, look at how much he's making. I mean, not that it's just about money, but like, look at the support he's got and the freedom that allows you to not have to slave away at a job. And also the project of Sam Cedar and Majority Report. Like, one of the things I like about Majority Report is every day before they go to break, they let their guests, or not guests, the crew promote their shows. Michael always promoted his, Jamie, I listen to her show too, The Antifada. Matt Leck does a show called The Literary Hangover, which I've tuned into his Twitch. He does an occasional Twitch thing where he has like a robot read a book or something. That's kind of cool. But it's like he's a very smart, thoughtful guy. He must read fast. I'm a slow reader. High comprehension, slow reading. Same kind of how I have sex. Okay, I really know what's going on, but I don't move quickly. Like when Jabba the Hutt does his taxes. Okay, that guy's got to be good at spreadsheets. What an inappropriate, weird joke to insert in the middle of a memorial segment. So Michael Brooks was a big part of my evolution as a political thinker and my entertainment as just a consumer of media. And so he was only 36. You never thought, yeah, this guy's almost out, like Bill O'Reilly. Been waiting for that vampire to expire. Come on, Bill. No, I'm joking. Don't die. It's okay. Just stop. Just stop. Just fucking stop. And last week, I don't usually watch Majority Report live, but I picked up on Twitter. People were worried. The show ended abruptly. Something had alarmed Sam in a text or something. He doesn't read the computer that he looks at. And they ended the show almost right away with some alert, and it was some alarm. And that set off the speculation machine, and a few people tweeted some stuff, and then they released their statement, and it was Michael. And man, that hit hard. That really hit tough. It just, what the fuck? People were stunned. It's still emotional for me to think about it. I have been watching some of the stuff, but I can't overdo it. I've been struggling a bit with my head lately, and leaning hard into grief. Although you shouldn't run from it, but you should, there are approaches to managing stress that are healthier or unhealthier, and it's just tough to consume that stuff now. But I still will. I mean, I'm listening partially to his the show that they did this week already, the first show without him. And they talked, the first guests were his mother and his father. Like, Jesus, that's a tearjerker right there, huh? And so, yeah, his sister said on the following day on the Majority Report, and shout out to them. They took the rest of the week off, but they did a show the next day, and they were pretty broken up and a lot of tears. I cried. Actually, that Tuesday, the day after, I'm home. I'm doing all this woodworking stuff, and I finally had a chance to sharpen my chisel set. I've only sharpened 2 of them, and I had 5 others, and they all needed to be reflattened, so you flatten the back, and then you flatten the bevel. And actually, I've yet to do the micro bevel, but that's a part of the process that I'll get to next. But so it takes it's more of a physical. You don't have to do the flat. You only have to do the back flattening once. It's all about geometry. You just want 2 as straight lines as you can get meeting, and that's how you get a sharp edge. It's really cool. And so I sat there sharpening chisels. using a giant piece of granite that I bought at Home Depot for $5, like a tile for some. It'd be really ugly, honestly. It's like this disgusting white. It looks like melted cookies and cream ice cream, like a white granite, like ugh. And it's big and flat though, so you can flatten the bottoms of plane irons, chisels, and the planes themselves. You need a big flat piece of something. Glass and granite are flat enough for that. So this is while the Majority Report was playing the next day. Sam Cedar's broken up. They're talking to different people. I'm crying half the time, just tears flowing. I'm not unaccustomed to tears. I don't run away from them. As I always point out, I'm a sensitive man, and I wasn't gonna be like, my boys shouldn't be crying. What the fuck? I mean, come on. I think that sentence alone, that notion, has led to so much turmoil, so much unresolved trauma in the male psyche, especially in this country, but I'm sure that's true throughout the world. Anyway, it was hard, and I just worked on the chisels, just scraping them back and forth over the sandpaper. You move across it's a process. You use up the sandpaper, and just sitting there in my room on this little table, working on my thing, listening to the show, and listening to and hearing a lot of people say the same thing, aside from the shock, but just their great gratitude and their loss for Michael being gone. His sister revealed, she was the first guest on that Tuesday, that it was a blood clot in his neck. I don't know any more about that in terms of Michael's exact case. It was a surprise. When you hear about a young person dying, it's usually, I guess, 4 potential explanations. It's a health emergency that they didn't know about. And this wasn't even really that. This was worse. It wasn't like he had cancer growing without realizing it, and it caught him and he had a heart attack or something. But with a young person, you think violence, suicide, or overdose or something. And who knows? Sometimes people have those factors in their lives that they've kept private, and that's totally okay. But not that I thought any of those about Michael. I was kind of curious, and I think everybody. That's one of those things when you hear someone dies, and your mind does anyway. I think this is probably somewhat common, where you want to know how. It's very. Not that you have a right to that information. People have a right to their privacy of how they die, I guess. I mean, not just I guess, but they should. But you want to know how, and it's because it just, I guess that's part of the story. Because when someone dies, you start telling stories, and I don't know. I don't want to make jokes right now. So the blood clot, this is interesting. And I guess I don't think this is overstepping or anything. I'm not. And so I talked to my brother about it. And he shares my politics mostly, I think. I imagine we might have a few areas of disagreement, whatever. That's totally fine. And he was also a Michael Brooks fan. My older brother, who is a professor of neuroscience. He's been on this show. And he and I talked last night. We had some stuff to talk about. And we talked about Michael a little bit, though. We were both sad about it, And I asked him about the blood clot thing. I was like, tell me what that is. What does that mean? So he didn't tell me, I think it's congealed glob of blood that forms downstream and then flows to a point of constriction. I believe that's what a clot is. But that's not what I was asking my brother about. I was like, what happens in the brain when that happens? And he's like, well, the oxygen is deprived from the head, from the brain. So that's essentially a stroke. A stroke is, now he didn't go into a ton of detail, but it is a sudden deprivation of blood to an area of the brain. And depending on where and how the specific factors of the stroke, basically think of it like a river system, of a circulatory system. If it blocks a big river, like an artery or a vein, I guess, I'm not sure exactly, it shuts down blood to the entire brain. And a neck clot could do that. There's some big veins, and obviously the neck. It's the neck. It's where everything is that feeds your head. Duh. It's the bottleneck. That shit goes up and down the neck. It's a lot of tubes. And there's electricity tubes, there's liquid tubes, there's air tubes. I call those my love tubes. See, I shouldn't do jokes. Why am I doing? That's how I deal with stress. And small strokes where people are like, they start slurring, or maybe they have some physical, weird physical symptoms, tingling, or limited use of a limb or something, are from a smaller part of the river system being blocked. So only a portion of the brain is being affected. And some people will have small, and again, this is not my brother, didn't say this part, but some people will have small strokes and not even realize it. And that's also true of heart attacks, from what I understand. It can feel just like a tightness in the chest for a brief moment, and then it goes away, and maybe you'll never have another one. Or maybe that's just an early sign of something that needs attention. So with a neck blood clot, it's probably, and again, so I'm not saying I know what happened to Michael. I'm not trying to say that, but just the kind of general science of a blood clot is it probably was catastrophic in that it probably blocked, if it were to block the entire feed to the brain or enough, there's a threshold where it's functionally all of it. What would happen then, and I'll actually get in a little bit more detail about that because this is sort of surface level stuff so far, is you probably, like the symptoms. I was like, what's the symptom of that? What do you feel? Like, what happens to you? And he goes, well, he probably just felt dizzy and kind of like lightheaded and then like passed out, basically. And more than likely, if it's that big, if it's one of the big ones, it would be very quick. The passing out part, you'd faint. You'd essentially just kind of feel something weird going on. You probably need to sit down, probably need to lay down, and you probably would just pass out. So at that point now, my brother starts telling me about mitochondria, and he's doing research on mitochondria. So he's like, I got videos. He's like, I've been taking videos of mitochondria. So he's like literally like taping these things. It's not just that he read something, and he teaches PhD students about mitochondria. So my brother truly is like an expert in this shit. And so he was saying that without oxygen, so mitochondria combines, he said food, because I'm dumb. I'm sure it's like, there's probably some science word for it. But they use oxygen and food to produce the power, the energy that the cell then uses for its operations. And without oxygen, you're depriving the mitochondria of a very important key element. And it has enough like reserve something. There's sort of a flux, because if you deprive it of oxygen for a second, you can't just die. Like there's enough of a what was the word I was using last night? Fluctuation. Like it's built in that you can handle a little deprivation. That's how biology is fair. There's like a little supply. But as the time goes on and the oxygen continues to not be delivered via blood to the mitochondria, they swell up. They start to stress. And they literally explode. My brother used the word explode, and I was like, I didn't say this, but I was like, that's not a science word. He's like, yeah, but he goes, they rupture. Like they actually break open, and I guess there's a lot of calcium inside of mitochondria. And a bunch of calcium comes out. And once your mitochondria is busted, the cell dies. It's just done. It just doesn't work anymore. I'm sure there's more science to that thing. I asked my brother how the eye works once, and he starts going, he named about 20 chemicals and nerves all before it even got to the optic nerve. And I was like, I just wanted you to say green. Just what the fuck, dude? Back off, jerk. No. But, so he's actually watched mitochondria explode and die from, science testing and shit. So, you've got about 6 minutes, he said. I was like, what's the time? Like how much, what's this? So like you have a clot now that's basically started of a timer. Like when do you need to intervene for there to be no damage or a little damage or something, and he said like, well, you basically, if you don't get that fixed within 6 minutes, that's it. There's really no coming back after that. And so like 5 minutes and 45 seconds, you're probably, you know what I mean? Like there's a range there. It's a gradient. I would imagine that like damage starts to accrue, and then there's a threshold where it goes to a point where there's just no coming back from that. So, one interesting thing my brother mentioned is that mitochondria is actually very it's the power cell of the power plant of the cell, and it benefits really nicely from fasting, from a break, from giving your cell a time to not be using it. So people who eat constantly, if you're always snacking, or if you follow like the daily recommended how to eat, like, oh, make sure you eat when you wake up, have a snack, have lunch, have another snack, have a second snack, have dinner, have dessert, not too much, have dessert, just a little. You're eating all the time, and your mitochondria is always working, as is so many other parts of your nutrition system. I'm not going to get into the whole thing about keto. I've been doing keto for a while. Lately, I've been eating some carbs, been getting a little chunky. Stress is a big part of that as well. But I've actually been fasting myself, like deliberately, like not eating for a time, and it's been wonderful. I've noticed incredible improvements. There's a thing called autophagy, which was, here I go. Sorry, I said I'm not, but this isn't keto. This is different. But the scientists who discovered it, or first properly categorized or whatever, they won a Nobel Prize for the introducing autophagy, or whatever it was, which is a process through which your body, during times of no food, it has a chance to a chance to clean itself up and consume, like they call them organelles, like little pieces of cells or little pieces of pieces that kind of build up over time within your cells and between your cells and stuff. So autophagy is the body's process by which it kind of cleans out that sort of remnant of its own process. I think of it like if you replace parts in your car, the new parts come in a package. And if you just throw the packages in the trunk, over time, you'll just have a ton of packages in the trunk, empty organelles. And so the process of autophagy is like saying, all right, turn off the engine. We're not doing that now. Let's clean out the stuff. And it's an important biological process. And I brought that up to my brother, and he said, yeah, actually, there's a thing called mitophagy, which is the same process basically as that mitochondria go through. And you can see, if you look at evolutionary or natural history, that humans did not have mini fridges and preservatives, or big fridges, or 7-Elevens, or restaurants, or delivery services. So they had periods where they had to go without food. Thus, the human body is incredibly equipped to withstand periods without food. We store fat differently than other primates do. That is to say, we more readily store fat. We gorge on sweets, honey, berries, tubers. The ancestors didn't have Cheetos and Mountain Dew. And we gain weight, we gain fat. But we don't always have that. We didn't always have that shit. So we have this like incredibly efficient fat system, because what fat is, it's a biological battery. It's energy that you can use and carry around. And when your body needs it, you have it attached to you. It's really healthy and good. Now we've messed with it because of our modern food system and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So mitochondria do a similar thing where they they get stronger when you take a break, when you fast. Not that you have to do it. And I'm not saying you should start fasting based on this information, but it's worth reading and researching, especially in the context of insulin. It plays well with keto because when you're on low insulin, keto for me, I look at it as a hormone management system, not so much about calories. It's more just about keeping insulin low, and that allows your body to have more or healthier function, more in line with the way the system is designed to work. So I've done almost 96 hours fast. I did a 4-day fast. I played tennis on day 3. I will often do 2-day fasts, 48 hours, and I only eat once a day. Although honestly, I did have a little bit of lunch today because I've been eating carbs. So now I'm hungrier during the day. That's one of my favorites. See, God damn, I'm doing it. Fuck. But my relationship with hunger is completely different when I'm eating primarily fat and protein and a little bit of carbs, but just a touch. So Oh, why am I rambling about this? It's amazing stuff. It's interesting stuff. So the mitochondria dies without oxygen, and without that, your cells die. Back to Michael. Jesus Christ. If that's what happened, it was probably quick, and he probably didn't have a lot of panic or fear or whatever ghost happens at that moment. So I guess that's good. I don't, that's weird to say that's good, but we don't know. Again, it's the science of it is interesting, and drowning is actually a similar deprivation of oxygen to your systems. So the mitochondria starts swelling up and dying, and you drown, you pass out, and you go. I imagine drowning's probably pretty scary. I bet there's, although just in terms of time, I think about being like in the rubble of a collapsed building and like having to starve for like 3 or 4 days and die of thirst. That sounds bad. It's like drowning into time, probably a decent way to go, just relative speaking. So I guess I'm saying I hope that it was quick, and I hope that he didn't suffer at the final bit, and he probably didn't even know he was dying. And it sucks. So rest in peace, Michael Brooks. Cancel culture. I'm not going to do this a lot. Don't worry. It's not something I think is worthy of your time or mine. It's actually, by even merely talking about it, almost reinforces some of the points to be made about the people who are afraid of being canceled. And as you might have known or seen it, this is a huge part of the conversation last week. A Harper's letter was published. You have a screenshot of the opening there somewhere. There it is. In Harper's magazine, entitled "A Letter on Justice and Open Debate." It pissed off everybody, because everybody's pissed off these days. And why wouldn't you be? You're supposed to be angry when the world is like this. Although the world is sort of placed in this position by people whose only motivation is to make them their already extremely comfortable lives. That is to say, they're wealthy. Like we're really just going to kill everybody on the planet because a bunch of oil executives wanted more money, because the sociopathic demands of capitalism to always grow, to have eternal growth, to prove yourself, the competitive nature of destroying each other in order to dominate marketplaces and manipulate governments for incredible return on investment and profit seeking and profit chasing and exploitation. And so we're going to kill everybody because rich people wanted more and didn't want to change at all. And finally, I think thanks to the internet, more voices are being heard than were ever heard before. Also, there's a lot more confusion, or I don't know, more is the right way to phrase that, but it's a completely different information ecosystem. By the way, let me give a white guy shout out to Chris Hayes. I've been thinking about, I wanted to kind of promote other shows that I listen to and stuff I listen. The first one is Chris Hayes. I like Chris Hayes. He's never going to say anything that's going to get him fired by MSNBC, but I think he's a decent guy, and I bet he's got a smooth, soft belly. Oh, don't you just want to rub that belly like a puppy? The puppy will rub that little belly. Oh, there you go, boy. But his podcast is interesting. He does interviews with dudes. But the latest one with a guy named David Roberts, they talk about information, how it gets through society, and the TLDR. That's Reddit speak for too long didn't read. Is that it's about trust. It's who do you trust? So I'm recommending that you go listen to that podcast, the latest one with David Roberts, and because it speaks to a lot of those broader themes that I'm always thinking about in terms of why do people believe the bullshit? I don't think any one person screaming about their mask at a grocery store, like we could easily make fun of those people, and I probably will. But there's a system of information, and there's an emotional stream of, well, this is what the Chris Hayes podcast got to really adeptly, was just like, who do you trust to tell you how the world is, and which narrative do you adhere to, and how do you apply that new information via those you trust, and how do you apply that to the narrative you, I've said this already, adhere to. I totally just talked myself into a corner, start repeating it. And I don't know, I just found that interesting. And but more and more these days, people who never had voices are able to organize, often for nefarious means. All the town weirdos used to be isolated because there was no internet. And now the town weirdos are all getting together online and teaching each other how to be shitty. And so there's an escalation of that factor, but there's also lots of good that happens because people are able to find communities that they couldn't find. Non-cis oriented people, younger, maybe they live in a conservative house or a conservative town. They might be able to find some solace and comfort online. People also get radicalized for various things. But this whole new information ecosystem has really upended things, and that's part of the chaos of what's going on right now, I think. Back in the day, newspapers were the internet, let's just say. So information was distributed via news and radio and then TV, and people trusted those sources of information. So there's this whole trust matrix that exists within online worlds. It's all very emotional. It's all very what makes you feel okay, what makes you feel right. Or do you want to avoid being challenged, avoid new information, avoid having your worldview challenged? So I'm not to say that I fully grasp it either. And because of that, there's been a lot of pushback to a lot of the dumb, stupid, shitty things people say. And also, there's a digital record to be mined and investigated. And oftentimes, I think that people look into someone's past, they find something, and they quote unquote get canceled or whatever. Or so I don't know. That's not even, I think, accurate. The point I'm trying to make is that there's a new way of. It's much less of a one-way street than it used to be. Two-way street probably doesn't even really capture it either. It's more of a brain almost. It's almost like an enormous hive mind is developing within humanity because the internet sort of offers a kind of a nervous system for communication. And time. It's a lot of time wasting, and a lot of companies, because advertising is a thing. They're able to engineer these platforms. I get sucked into Twitter rabbit holes constantly, and I've been deliberately trying to pull back from Twitter and struggling with it like a drug, like an addiction. And as I've said, I had a drinking issue years back, and I know what addiction feels like, and it feels like Twitter. Like it's not quite, and there's some big differences too, but I can feel the compulsion. And it's abhorrent to me. So I'm trying to pull back, and this is kind of, I think, a issue lots of people deal with. And man, I can't imagine what it's like for being children to have phone screens in your face from the very get go. That's got to mess your head up somewhat. They're really going to freak out when all the electricity gets turned off, aren't they? So wow, I'm not even getting to the point of this whole thing here. I just think that there's a newly emerging systems of feedback, and the portions of society that were comfortable and had been highly rewarded for, I guess, hard work, luck, privilege, position, status. I guess I don't like using this term per se, but the professional managerial class, like not the super billionaires, but the and not even to say like the nefariously minded, although some of them probably you could apply that term, but just like those who are kind of would have done fine without the internet because they would have had platforms to spew their correct or incorrect nonsense, no longer have the one-way street that they were so comfortable with. And that's what I think is going on with what we call cancel culture. I also think it's gross, the term cancel, because that's kind of like we're sort of embodying Trumpism in his ratings obsessed worldview of the competitive. Like he just the other day was talking about how, no, or was this yesterday, which would also be other, so that's technically accurate, how Anthony Scaramucci, no, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Anthony Scarafauci, hey, folks, you got to wear a mask, okay? Oh, wear a mask. Oh, I got my pinky ring stuck in my nose. One time when I was in school with a little kid, some kid got a bunch of couch foam in their nose. I guess they stuffed a bunch of foam up their own nose. Or someone else did it, which is an awfully strange thing to do to a person. So, but Trump was bitching about how nobody likes him and that Fauci's getting good ratings. And it's just, it's like, this guy's got nuclear weapons. But the notion of cancel, like eventually we're going to get reboot culture. And then we're going to get remake culture. Like, what are we doing? What is this bullshit? Cancel culture. So the term itself is problematic for various reasons. I could quibble with the cancel culture usage, and I've seen some interesting takes and analysis of it. And but anybody in your life who you hear use the word social justice warrior or snowflake or cancel culture or what's even Karen, these things, these kind of like, and I'm not saying that language shouldn't evolve or that new words should be taken away. TLDR, they should. I mean, wait, they shouldn't. It's good that language evolves and that people develop new words and new concepts and stuff. That's fine, But like, generally, these things are quite kind of the wizards in the castles and the palaces and the fortresses of politics and news and media. They program them into you, and you end up repeating them. I was at my mom's place. She lives in an older folks kind of building. Not quite. It's like a pre-retirement home, almost. And thank God. She's so much better for her than where she was before. She's had some really difficult years. But somebody died. Her neighbor died because there's no moving out of those places usually. Oh, I mean, I guess there's going to the nursing home. But there's also the ambulance with its lights off. You know what that means. So that happens there. And actually, when my mom first moved in, I was like, "Oh fuck, there's gonna be all kinds of death." And then that happened. Like the people were dying. And I was like, because my mom's real sensitive. I was like, I don't want her to get all wigged out and she'll get attached to some person and they'll die. It's like adopting an old dog. It's like, well, you signed up for the funeral. My mom adopted an old dog once, and I was like, Mom, what the fuck? She said, what the fuck are you doing that for? And she loved that dog. Whatever. It's a collie. Collie. No thanks. What am I? What? This is how I do. This is about a tiny fraction of what it's like in my head all day long. But Mom, she's gotten used to the folks dying at her building. What am I talking about? And the family of her neighbor when I just happened to be back for this whenever, and they were in the hallway doing like cleaning it out or getting, oh great, we're gonna box up all this old shit. Anyway, we stopped and chatted with them, and one of the ladies, and she, not that I don't even know how it came up, but somehow she started going on about, well, what I was picking up on it fairly quickly, when you start to just sense there's that they've been Fox Newsified. Not that I'm trying to suss that out of everybody I meet. I can pretend to be pretty normal pretty well. I'm great at small talk. How's the weather? Yeah? Go fuck yourself. I hope you die in a lightning storm, and not because of the lightning. I just hope you... Okay. I'm very charming is my point. That's what I'm trying to say. And but she started in on this thing. She said, well, I'll tell you what, these people, I call them snowflakes. And I was like, yeah, you call, I didn't say this, but I was like, you call them snowflake. You came up with that? You didn't just get that programmed into your fucking brain by the media that you consume? And I started this episode by talking about media I consume. And we all trust the information we get. But I'm skeptical. And I pride myself on being persuadable and on being open to new information, even though I know that I have that bias where I don't like to have my beliefs challenged. I mean, that's a thing if you feel that emotion, but I'm willing to like sit with that and move past it. That's one thing that I try to do, marinating in a lot of negative emotions for most of my life for various reasons. You and I'm giving this as an advice. I hope like the first reaction you have, welcome it, embrace it, but be open to the notion that there might be deeper layers. And I think so much what happens nowadays is people are so confident about their first reaction that it feels so strong, and that, especially if it verifies something they already believe, that they're just or it's a challenge to what they believe, and therefore they can, like, I think that's what a lot of what like being offended is. There's legit reasons to be offended, no doubt, but like a lot of being offended is basically saying, I'm not as confident in my identity as I wish and my beliefs, and I'm going to use this opportunity to reaffirm what I believe in the guise of standing up to an offensive joke or something. That notion especially, I think, applies to like comedy clubs, or, you know, because there are definitely legit offensive things in the world. So, wow, that's I don't remember even why I started saying that. So let's get into this article a little bit. I'm going to read it, but don't worry. There's a little bit more to this than you think. So we're going to talk about cancel culture and what the folks who signed on to the article, who will see some of their names, Fareed Zakaria. Sorry, buddy, you're not invited to my birthday anymore. You're canceled, bitch. Noam Chomsky, canceled, bitch. You're not invited to my quinceañera, motherfucker. Take that, Noam. You know what Noam Chomsky needs to do? I'll tell you what. Get a better microphone, motherfucker. I can't understand a single goddamn word you say. Speak up. I know he's old as fuck, you know, he can't, but it's like, dude, I actually do value that guy's perspectives, and I want to hear what he has to say. Get a better microphone, Gnome. Okay, here's the first paragraph of a letter on justice and open debate. Our cultural institutions are facing a moment of trial. Powerful protests for racial and social justice are leading to overdue demands for police reform, along with wider calls for greater equality and inclusion across our society, not least in higher education, journalism, philanthropy, and the arts. Fucking philanthropy. But this needed reckoning has also intensified a new set of moral attitudes and political commitments that tend to weaken our norms of open debate and toleration of differences in favor of ideological conformity. Oh, hold on. I've got another story here. Hold on. Just coming in here. Another person has died from rationing insulin. This is from the Intelligencer. 21-year-old Jessamiah David Scherer Radcliffe might still be alive if he could have afforded his insulin. Care 11 reported on Sunday that the Minnesota man had been rationing the insulin he needed to treat his diabetes. The cost of insulin is ridiculous, Jessamiah's father, David Radcliffe, told the news station. It is hard for me to even go in there and look at his casket. He is gone now. Radcliffe added, I just think this country is backwards, and I am a veteran. I have seen other countries and how they operate. Okay, back to the article. As we applaud the first development, we also raise our voices against the second. The forces of illiberalism are gaining strength throughout the world and have a powerful ally in Donald Trump, who represents a real threat to democracy. But resistance must not be allowed to harden into its own brand of dogma or coercion, which right-wing demagogues are already exploiting. The democratic inclusion we want can be achieved only if we speak out against the intolerant climate that has set in on all sides. Oh, hold on. New article coming in. New article. I just got some more information. Another thing I need to share with you. This is a headline from the Harvard Gazette. New study finds 45,000 deaths annually linked to lack of health coverage. The subheading is uninsured working age Americans have 40% higher death risk than privately insured counterparts. Nearly 45,000 annual deaths are associated with lack of health insurance, according to a new study published online today by the American Journal of Public Health. That figure is about 2.5 times higher than an estimate from the Institute of Medicine in 2002. Deaths associated with lack of health insurance now exceed those caused by many common killers, such as kidney disease. An increase in the number of uninsured and an eroding medical safety net for the disadvantaged likely explain a substantial increase in the number of deaths. As the uninsured are more likely to go without needed care, Another factor contributing to the widening gap in the risk of death between those who have insurance and those who do not is the improved quality of care for those who can get it. The Institute of Medicine, using older studies, estimated that 1 American dies every 30 minutes from lack of health insurance, remarked David Himmelstein, study co-author, associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, and a primary care physician at Cambridge Health Alliance. Even this grim figure is an understatement. Now, 1 dies every 12 minutes. All right, back to the article. Let's see what's upsetting for Reed and Barry Weiss. Here's paragraph 2. The free exchange of information and ideas, the lifeblood of a liberal society, is daily becoming more constricted. While we have come to expect this on the radical right, censoriousness is also censorship. Censorious. You really want to take you fucking seriousness with this censoriousness shit? Censoriousness is also spreading more widely in our culture. An intolerance of opposing views, a vogue for public shaming. Is that supposed to mean performance? What does vogue mean? I don't know what vogue means. All I know is that it means something about striking poses, right? Vogue, deaf. The prevailing fashion or style at a particular time. Adjective, popular, fashionable. Verb, dance to music in such a way as to imitate the characteristic poses struck by a model on a catwalk. Well, you do. You strike a pose. Okay. That was a fun detour. Just going to start back at the colon here. An intolerance of opposing views, a vogue for public shaming and ostracism, and the tendency to dissolve complex policy issues in a blinding moral certainty. We uphold the value of robust and even caustic counterspeech from all quarters. Oh, hold on. Sorry, we got another story coming in here. This is some reporting from our friends at Care 11, Minnesota's own Care 11, an NVC affiliate.
At the state capitol today, families rallying to call attention to the high prices of insulin and other prescription drugs. One Minnesota mother says the rising prices of drugs is an epidemic and that it killed her son, Alex Smith, when he was 26, when he died last summer, just weeks after aging out of his parents' health insurance. She says he couldn't afford the coverage on his own.
He was actually found dead in his apartment on June 27th. So he lasted 27 days not being covered.
According to the American Diabetes Association, nearly 7.5 million Americans need insulin, and studies show the cost of insulin nearly tripled from 2002 to 2013.
Back to the article. But it is now all too common to hear calls for swift and severe retribution in response to perceived transgressions of speech and thought. More troubling still, institutional leaders, in a spirit of panic damage control, are delivering hasty and disproportionate punishments instead of considered reforms. Editors are fired for running controversial pieces. Books are withdrawn for alleged inauthenticity. Journalists are barred from writing on certain topics. Professors are investigated for quoting works of literature in class. A researcher is fired for circulating peer-reviewed academic study. And the heads of organizations are ousted for what are sometimes just clumsy mistakes. Boy, it's tough. It's tough, huh? Here's a new article coming in here. We've got to share. The homeless are dying in record numbers on the streets of Los Angeles. Subhead, homeless people are dying across Los Angeles County on bus benches, hillsides, railroad tracks, and sidewalks. This is from U.S. News and World Report. A record number of homeless people, 918 last year alone, are dying across Los Angeles County on bus benches, hillsides, railroad tracks, and sidewalks. Deaths have jumped 76% in the past 5 years, outpacing the growth of the homeless population, according to a Kaiser Health News analysis of the coroner's data. Health officials and experts have not pinpointed a single cause for the sharp increase in deaths, but they say rising substance abuse may be a major reason. The surge also reflects growth in the number of people who are chronically homeless and those who don't typically use shelters, which means more people are living longer on the streets with serious physical and behavioral health issues, they say. Nearly 53,000 people were homeless in LA County last year, according to a point-in-time count of homeless residents, an increase of about 39% since 2014. The majority were not living in shelters. The homeless population has also grown nationwide, but there is no national count of homeless deaths. We don't even count their deaths. Back to the article. Whatever the arguments around each particular incident, the result has been to steadily narrow the boundaries of what can be said without the threat of reprisal. We're already paying the price in greater risk aversion among writers, artists, and journalists who fear for their livelihoods if they depart from the consensus, or even lack sufficient zeal in agreement. Oh, hold on. New article coming in. Trump migrant separation policy. Children in cages in Texas, from the BBC. Our friends over there at the British Babe Company. June 2018. The head of the Tahrir Justice Center in Houston said she had seen cases where parents had not been told ahead of time that their child was being taken away, and instead were told by immigration officers that their child required a bath, only to not be returned. I was talking to one mother, and she said, "Don't take my child away," and the child started screaming and vomiting and crying hysterically, and she asked the officers, "Can I at least have 5 minutes to console her?" They said no, Ms. Chandler told the magazine. A rights worker who visited the Ursula facility at the weekend, that's how it's written. A rights worker who visited the Ursula facility at the weekend told the Associated Press she had spoken to a 16-year-old girl who was left in charge of an unaccompanied toddler for 3 days and tasked with changing the child's nappies. She had to teach other kids in the cell to change her diaper, Michelle Brain from the Women's Refugee Commission said. The girl, who was 4 years old, was later reunited with her aunt, but the process took time because she did not speak Spanish, but a language indigenous to Guatemala, the agency reports. She was so traumatized that she wasn't talking, Miss Brain said, describing the girl. She was just curled up in a little ball. Back to the letter. This is the final paragraph. This stifling atmosphere will ultimately harm the most vital causes of our time. The restriction of debate, whether by a repressive government or an intolerant society, invariably hurts those who lack power and makes everyone less capable of democratic participation. The way to defeat bad ideas is by exposure, argument, and persuasion, not by trying to silence or wish them away. We refuse any false choice between justice and freedom, which cannot exist without each other. Oh, new article coming in real quick here. Need to share this from the American Psychological Association. Stopping military and veteran suicides is the headline. Approximately 17 U.S. veterans die by suicide every day, a rate that is about 1.5 times that of non-veterans after adjusting for differences in age and sex, according to the Department of Veterans Affairs, VA 2019 National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report. This is Trump's VA, so I don't think we should necessarily trust it's as low as 17. I have seen numbers higher than 17. But even if that's accurate, it's horrifying. Among active duty U.S. troops, suicide rates remain about on par with that of the non-military U.S. population, but both are on the rise. In August, the Department of Defense announced that 325 active duty soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines died by suicide in 2018, 40 more than in 2017, and the highest number since the department began collecting suicide data in 2001. That's 17 a day is more than 325, right? That's not, that math doesn't, there must be something there that I'm missing. Nobody really knows why suicide rates continue to climb, says Craig Byron, ABPB, Executive Director of the National Center for Veterans Studies at the University of Utah. Many blame demographics. 85% of the military is male, and men die by suicide more often than women. As if that's just like, yeah, well, men are more broken. But we also know that even female service members and veterans die by suicide at a higher rate than non-veterans and non-service members, Brian says. In fact, according to 2017 data from the 2019 VA Suicide Prevention Annual Report, after adjusting for age, the suicide rate for women veterans was 2.2 times greater than the suicide rate for non-veteran women. In addition to demographics, factors such as insomnia, depression, anxiety, sexual victimization, gun ownership, and substance use disorders also appear to contribute to suicide risk among service members and veterans. Older veterans may also be coping with aging, stress, or lingering effects stemming from their military service that have never been addressed, while many recently discharged veterans have trouble with their relationships or their transitions back to civilian life. Back to the article. This is the final leg. This is almost over. As writers, we need a culture that leaves us room for experimentation, risk-taking, and even mistakes. We need to preserve the possibility of good faith disagreement without dire professional consequences. If we don't defend the very thing on which our work depends, we shouldn't expect the public or the state to defend it for us. Finally, an article coming in from The Cut, July 9, 2020. Breonna Taylor was shot and killed by police in her own home. EMT and aspiring nurse Breonna Taylor, 26, was shot to death by police in her own home on March 13th. In what's been described as a botched raid, officers barged into Taylor's apartment in Louisville, Kentucky, as she lay sleeping and fired multiple rounds. 3 months after she was senselessly killed, Taylor's name has been chanted all over the country at mass protests against racist police brutality, which erupted after the death of Minneapolis resident George Floyd, also at the hands of police. Taylor was shot 8 times by police. According to a lawsuit filed by her family, her killing was the result of a botched drug warrant execution. No drugs were found. The warrant in question targeted another person who lived miles away and had already been detained by the time police entered Taylor's home. There you go. That's the cancel culture fear. Bunch of wealthy, successful, high privilege, high status people don't like being criticized. And so we're all talking about it because they have influence. They determine the narrative. That's the whole point, that they are afraid of losing the power to control the narrative. Not that this is all one group, and there's been a bunch of bullshit where people say, I didn't know what was in the letter. I didn't need to sign it. The letter is just a bunch of pablum. It's honestly just, it's actually a lot less thought through than I thought. I'm almost embarrassed I did a whole segment about it. The point, obviously, I was making was to show that there are real dangers and actual violence coursing through society that is killing and harming people who don't have power and who never get justice and who never have anybody stand up and fight for them. And none of these motherfuckers are going to sign a collective letter to protest dying because you can't afford insulin, dying because you went to war for the corporations of this country and you came back and they abandoned you, dying because you're a black woman sleeping in a bed. Where's all the names signing off for these folks? Let's look at let's just let this scroll. I did a screen recording. Margaret Atwood signed it. I don't know everybody. I recognize very few of them. Let's see. David W. Blight from Yale. Neil Blair, agent. Oh, Reginald Dwayne Betts, poet. Kat Rosenfield, writer. Loretta J. Ross, Smith College. Kim Gattas. Malcolm Gladwell. Kian Columbia University. Zephyr Teachout. What the fuck, Zephyr? Barry Weiss. Everybody who cares? Jesus Christ. Randall Kennedy. Fareed Zakaria. Noam Chomsky. He's in there somewhere. Dahlia Lithwick. That's it. I am no longer wearing my NPR onesie to bed. Fuck off, Dahlia. Like, that's the thing is, like, you know what? There's probably little seeds of truth in some of this. There's probably some situations where someone was unfairly maligned by an online activity that wasn't appropriately applied. And I think that's inherent to this. And should there be mechanisms for reducing that? Yeah, actually, I think there should. And I would say take away the profit motive. Reduce the power corporations have to manipulate people with data by advertising to them, selling the data, harvesting the data, and then selling to them. Capitalism is the problem, as with everything, because it inhibits proper human nature. I don't know. So, and I think there's a distinction between good faith and bad faith arguments that need to be made. I would suggest there's a lot of, let's overuse another term, epidemic of bad faith argumentation out there, where people don't actually care to learn and discuss things with each other and learn something from another person, or actually genuinely expressing a question, but they're just concerned trolling. Kind of another one. I could parse out that term a little bit more, but and just kind of trying to make a point, or the real part of trolling is where the whole thing is, as long as they're just sapping energy from you, that's all that they need. Doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter how you respond, as long as they've gotten a response, that's good enough for them. It's just a drain from your focus, it's a drain from your attention, it's a drain, and there's a strange form of incentivizing structures that make people want to do that kind of stuff. Is it a tiny percentage? Yeah, but can they have a bigger impact? Yeah, they can. I catch myself sometimes replying to people online, and I'm like, what am I doing? Not even in a trolly way, but just like, why am I even throwing in like, who cares? They don't need me to say something. If it's a funny joke, I will, or if it's like a person, sometimes it's okay. It's not always. I don't mind when people comment to tweets I write or whatever, but yeah, like everything, there's nuance to this, but this is just it's kind of pathetic. A world riven with turmoil and fear and bloody violence and overrun with destructive beliefs of the past, the recent past, where people are being 150,000 people have died from the COVID-19 virus. How many were supposed to die in America? I mean, it was going to kill some people. Had we responded appropriately? I was thinking about this the other day. I guess the way you would figure it out, if you were to have to come up with a number, is you would average the amount of people of the states, the countries like New Zealand, South Korea, Vietnam, and it's not completely snuffed out all over the world at all. But so there's going to be little flare-ups around these countries, but they've driven these numbers down dramatically, and you'd average out how many people die relative to those populations and do the math for America. I haven't done that. I don't know the number, but I know it's not 150,000. I would imagine it's around 5,000, or a lot of people would have died in America had we done the exact right thing, even close to the right thing. But it's not been that at all. It's been a free for all for the government to give away corporate benefits to their cronies, gamesmanship in making money, and the politics of it all is just it's insanity the way Trump has handled this. So we're really don't need to be, again, wasting time on it. I'm doing the thing I'm saying is wrong, is to be so upset that a bunch of comfortable people are a little more uncomfortable than they're comfortable with. So everybody who signed this list can kiss my fucking ass, including you, Chomsky. Here's my Chomsky impression. You ready?
Dialectic.
Okay. All right. I like Chomsky, by the way. It's not about shit. I really want... Get a better microphone, would you, motherfucker? You know what? I also told myself I'd swear less. I swear too much. It's very unbecoming. I'm not a fan. Sorry about that. All right. Next story, then we'll be done. Over an hour 20, so that's good, as usual. This one should be quick. The point is pretty obvious. This thing hit Twitter the last week. People were sharing this clip. The tweet I should have it for the screen, but it's from a reporter, and this isn't about the reporter. It's like a small market NBC in Maine, and a young woman doing her job as a reporter. So this story is not to drag on her, but she tweeted it, and people were mostly commenting about the monstrous nature of the story. It is one of those stories that was framed as like, look at this little kid. He sold his kidney so that his sister could get a lung transplant, or this kid started a business to raise money for his mother's surgery. Like those kind of stories are like, isn't this a feel good? Oh, little Billy stepped up and did the right thing. In a society, the wealthiest fucking society that ever exists, a child gave up his or her childhood in order to temporarily alleviate one tiny corner of a vast array of deliberate pain that the people in charge could have done something about. And still been rich as fuck. If they took care of everybody, they'd still all be rich as fuck. That's the thing that's also so aggravating about this. So this is one of those feel-good stories And this is the tweet, or this is the video that's been shared. I found the full video of it, though. So we're going to watch that. And I'm because I hadn't seen that shared out there. But this is what was going around.
I'm lucky to have a job. I do what they want done and do how they want it done and do what I'm told. Anything else you want to know?
Oh, cute lady, huh? So, and that was what they had clipped out, the station had clipped out to share. That wasn't edited by someone else and shared. That was like what the reporter had put out there. An 84-year-old woman got a job because she needed it. Didn't have enough money. 84 years old. Now, what's her job? She volunteering at like the library or like a hospital to like tell people to sit in a chair by the front and say, oh yeah, go ahead. Cafeteria's that way. You have bathrooms are over there. Yeah. Vomit buckets are down there over there in the vomit district. No, I think it's fine for an older person who wants to work, wants to get out and do something. That's good. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be labor, but staying busy in your old age and your sunset years and relaxing, though. I think that's like, should we really expire toiling away for someone else's comfort and profit into your very last moments of life? I mean, you could make an argument for it. I could make an argument against that. And most people would agree, I hope, especially those who share my viewpoints in politics, that it's a complete disgusting display of the rot within our country. So let's see the full context, though. We should watch the whole story. This is, by the way, local news is, I guess, this is information I know from working at TYT because we had to worry about copyright shit all the time. They're pretty litigious, so this might get flagged on YouTube, in which case there'll be an edit right now because I'll take it out. But local news, apparently, like you have to be real, like national stuff. There's just more of a fair. It just plays nicer with fair use rules. But local, this is all fair use. I'm going to make comments on it. I'm not claiming this is my own original work, nor am I making money. And it's just news. I'm talking about news. So here's the story. I will probably break in, but I'll just let you guys watch the story.
All right, now we have this. Thousands of Mainers are still unemployed following COVID-19's major economic impact. A woman in Southwest Harper,
So this is the host in the studio. Now she's going to throw to the reporter.
though, is writing a different story for herself, which involves getting back on the payroll almost 20 years after the normal retirement age.
20. She could have been retired 20 years. And she's going back to work. She's the Rodney Dangerfield of our time. Hey, I don't get no food.
Our Chloe Tebow is here this morning with her story. Hi, Chloe.
Hi, Sharon. Good morning. Yeah, 84-year-old Jackie Hart is a born and raised Mainer who was looking to get back to work with a positive attitude. In June, she applied to become a housekeeper for the Harbor View Motel in
Housekeeper at a resort, at a hotel thing. Have you ever cleaned something or made a bed? I cleaned my bathroom yesterday. I've been in therapy, rehab, for weeks because of yesterday's bathroom clean. No, I'm joking. But I was down on my knees, fucking crawling around. I really did a deep clean. It is labor. That is work. Housekeeper at a hotel. One of the least appreciated jobs in the world. You're on your feet. You're dealing with people's stuff. Their disgusting fluids. It's so... 84-year-old housekeeper.
Cottages, a place known for its stunning views, loyal customers, and
rampant exploitation.
Employees, and now Jackie's feisty spirit.
Now, let me see.
Look at her. Okay, look, there's a video here. She's with a man. It turns out this guy is the manager who also is his family's owned it for 50 years. So he's the owner. He's the son's owner. So he's her boss. So he's showing up at the news crew. He's pretending to work. I mean, maybe he throws in. Actually, this is not even so much about this guy himself. He is her boss. Intuitively, I kind of resent all bosses. But the system is where the real ire should be aimed in this. But this lady is helping this guy make a bed. Making a bed sucks. You have to be a yoga professional in order to make a bed without breaking something.
fold it down.
You might think Jackie Hart has been working.
He's wearing gloves and she's not. Hold on, back. Yep. Okay, look, he's got a safety glove on and she's not. This old lady's getting human jizz on her hands. I hope. Let's hope it's not some other kind of animals. You know that's happened. Those fucking Bibles. Why do they put Bibles in hotels? How ridiculous is that? I want to come up with a sticker. I don't know if I would bother following through, but like I used to write in the Bible, like, hey, this is just a book. It's okay for you to think for like I've stayed in hotels in my life, but not a ton of travel. But I've had those moments where I'm like, I'm just going to write a little note in this Bible here. Is that defacing it? No, it's not. Drawing a pair of boobs would be defacing it because Jesus had small boobs. Yeah, historic. That's right. Let's get back to the story. He's wearing safety gloves and she's not. That's ridiculous.
Jackie Hart has been working as a housekeeper for decades, but in reality...
I think you need to pull it over some.
And she's so old in her hair, and she's so old. She just like, this is horrifying. She's got like that old people skin and I'm not trying to crap on her for being old. I'm just saying like this person shouldn't have to work. We shouldn't put people in this position.
She's only been doing it for about 2 months.
I'm lucky to have a job.
Yeah.
Hart says her Social Security check wasn't cutting it.
Oh. Her money, she didn't have money. She didn't have food. She didn't have a place to live. Meaning without work, she'd be without any of that. So she had to go help some fuckface make himself a profit in order for her to eat at that age. Now watch this. If you're listening, you won't see it. So he's entering a room. There's a step. And just watching her take the step, it is painful. It makes my lumbars hurt.
Oh, housekeeping.
So she called Harper View Motel and Cottages back in June.
I took the phone and I hear this woman's voice.
It's agonizing watching her step. She doesn't...
She said, I hear you're looking for a housekeeper. I said, yes, we are. She goes, well, I'd like to apply and I'm a good worker.
That's a quality Hart is very proud of.
I do what they want done and do how they want it done and do what I'm told.
I take orders and I do what they tell me. I mean, that's what a job is. You don't follow your boss's orders, you're going to lose your job. You'll go be back into the terrifying tiger maw of unemployment and shame and humiliation and possibly starvation or eviction and homelessness.
Even as the newest employee, she fits right in with the others, and most of them have been here.
So these are the other housekeepers. They look like a tough bunch. They look like they could beat my ass, you know, or they could all like one of them could cover their ears, one covers her eyes, one covers her mouth. Tough ladies, you know that these ladies have been making beds for decades, so they got those big bed making muscles, man.
For about 20 years, that loyalty standing out.
I'll talk to them in the off season. You know, when I'm not here. This
is another guy. He's super bald and he's just sitting there, but they don't identify who this guy is. This is just kind of crap. Like, who the fuck is this guy? They don't say who he is. He's just some dude talking.
Send an email or call, say, how's it going?
They really are the ones running the show, and I just try and stay out of the way.
And when Sedge can't do that...
Ready?
Yeah. Jack...
I mean, isn't this guy humiliated to be folding a blanket here with an old lady? And, you know, there's probably a generous interpretation. She wanted a job. She needed a job. He said yes. He definitely could have said no. He probably felt, I'm doing her a favor. She needs money. She needs a job. And he seems like a nice guy, honestly. Like this is the kind of the part of these sorts of stories where the individual nature of the perpetrators are the victim's individuality matters, but the perpetrator's individuality emerges from the systems that make this a thing. We could have a world where people didn't have to work until they're in their mid-80s doing physical labor, where you'd be taken care of if you reach 65 or maybe earlier than that, as we continue to develop technologies like automation and computing stuff and AI and machine learning, ways of developing greater and greater abundance and distributing that abundance to everybody. Maybe people could retire at 40, or maybe people only need to work 10 hours a week and they do work until they're 60 or something. Meanwhile, they've also built themselves a cool side business and some other, skills and all the amazing art, music, and other things that'll be produced by a planet full of people that aren't always working and stressed out. There's so much money to be distributed and value to be harvested, and it all goes to the super wealthy and the millionaires who love them. But if I was folding a blanket with a lady who was 84 years old, I would beat myself up. Like, you help people. She needs help. This is the kind of person, just watching her walk, that you'd want to help cross the street, make sure she was okay. It's just, and she seems plucky, and that's kind of what the story is about. Is like, oh, look at her, she's feisty, she'll do it, and she has to. And there is a small percent, like everything, there's sort of a distribution of traits within every population. Not everybody has that pluckiness, so we've developed a system where only the rare traits, or I don't know how rare it is, but honestly, there's a lot of plucky people. I think human beings in general are pretty tough animals, but complicated, but tough. But they're like, so just a small, or, like when you talk about economically underdeveloped areas, urban areas, say, or rural areas, there's lots of it, where people come out of it, like where they defy the norms and they build themselves through very hard work. Usually takes some kind of overcoming tremendous odds, and they're able to claw their way out of that dire circumstance. And we point at that, or at least we, meaning generally those on the right, or those the neoliberal position, the centrists, the Biden-esque position of just like, well, look, that person crawled out. That means everybody else who didn't is because of personal failures. It's because they are losers, and their characteristics do not meet our standards for what it takes to succeed. And there's actually kind of a cold truth to that. Not that they're losers, but the cold truth part of it is that only a narrow subset of people can claw their way out of these dungeons. And I don't want to live in that world. I don't think we have to. I also think that it's easier, safer, healthier for everybody if we look after everybody. If everybody's pain is an emergency, if everybody's pain is a problem that you take on to solve, and I'm not saying I run around solving everybody's problems. I'm just some weirdo struggling to keep his head on straight, trying to find a sense of security in terms of my own career and whatever else. So, I guess, is that hypocrisy? I don't know. But on a societal, structural level, we are letting so many people down and forcing 84-year-olds to work. There's more to this.
Jackie is happy to have a helping hand.
He's very good to let me work the way I work. At my age, he doesn't push me. He helps me.
Yeah, I could see him, being a real he seems like he's a nice guy. I don't want it to be about that specific dude. Get to work, you fucking bitch. What are you doing? Hey, lady. Time to catheter, time to clean, okay? How dare you scoop up your bag of urine? I don't know if she has a catheter or not. You there, crypt keeper with the translucent skin. What the fuck? I told you to clean that room 2 hours ago. I did clean it. I meant clean the other room. I cleaned that too. My finger fell off. What, did you clean that? I couldn't reach it. It fell under the bed. Oh, god damn it. Fuck. I'm taking that finger cost out of your pay. I don't know what that means. So yeah. Man. One other reason I want to feel better is I'm funnier when I don't feel so fucked up. Let's go.
Now, the man you saw Jackie working with is Sedge Saunders. He's her manager, and they clearly have a really special bond. The motel has also been in his family for more than 50 years.
Oh, the manager. By the way, The motel's been his family for 50 years. So maybe like some, who knows? So there's like various people in a family business that they're not the owner, but you're related to the owners or the owners.
Sedge did add that they're taking the necessary precautions right now during this pandemic to help protect staff and customers. Live at home this morning, Chloe Tebow, News Center, Maine.
Thank you, Chloe. Good job. Wish you well in your news career. It's not about shitting on Chloe. That's depressing, isn't it? What a shit world, huh? And it's kind of funny to be like, well, listen, they're taking care and they're making sure everybody's safe. We could do that by taxing the billionaires and providing a social safety net so that people don't have to be working when they're in their 80s because their social security is insufficient. We could strengthen that. And the Republicans want to take away what there is, what little people get, as do the Democrats. Obama tried to cut social security. There's a term that he, it's not coming right now. Chained index something, some way of calculating the amount that's paid out. He was looking to change the formula so that it would grow slower, but it was ideologically in line with Republican orthodoxy. These folks are getting too much. Oh, listen, we just keep throwing money for everybody. Listen, well, we got a job. What, you want to tell an old lady she shouldn't work? Yes. No, I don't want to tell her what to do. But I want to tell the billionaires that you got enough. We should cap it. Maximum wealth. I think it should be $10 million. You're not going to persuade me that you need more than $10 million to have an amazing life. But I'm reasonable. How about 50? That's 25 times the average earnings of a college graduate, according to a study from the University of Indiana in 2009. The number actually is 1.8. So I say $2 million over a person's life is the average earnings of a college graduate. Times 25 is 50. That's how I get to 50 million. I think that's a defensible position. But we have none of that. Well, they took a risk. They took they took on the risk of doing the business. That's why they should have all the money from people who produce it. You stop working, they stop making money. The wealth comes from the work. Profit, I heard this the other day. Some of you may have heard this. I hadn't. Profit is stolen wages. Actually, no, it's unpaid wages. Profit is just unpaid wages. That shit belongs to the people who make it. So maybe it doesn't all belong to them. Some of it should go to the organization in terms of bills and expenses, but they should have influence over where your own value goes. That's the world that they're desperate to prevent. That's why you have union busting. Like what TYT did. Not that that's even what the union was demanding on controlling profits, but it was going to reduce power, increase the power of a negotiating group, because collectively you're stronger than the individuals who run an organization, because the real value comes from work. It's not just TYT, although I am going to talk more about that in future episodes soon. It's an old story. They just want to prevent people from having enough power and time to organize, and from figuring out that the real value, the real worth of all this effort comes from land and people. Raw materials existing inherently in nature, and the value of people it takes to pull it out and form it into shapes and then deliver it to people and services too. Instead, the people who do the work don't get to control the value. And that's fucked up. I think that needs to change. And wherever it's done, you know what happens? People are healthier, happier, live longer, safer, and the bosses still get to be rich fuck faces. You still get to be a rich fuck face. $10 million would be an utterly incomprehensible amount of money to most of us. Oh, well, you can't take that. You can't. They didn't earn it. Okay. Final story, completely unrelated. Jeff Bezos reportedly just bought the most expensive home ever sold in California. This is according to Business Insider, after spending nearly a year touring some of the priciest mega mansions in the state. I did see him checking out an apartment in my neighborhood. He was walking around with a broken clipboard. This is, let's see, this is just the little bullet point things. Jeff Bezos reportedly just spent $165 million on a new Beverly Hills mansion, shattering the previous record for the most expensive home ever sold in California. You know you're rich when one of the ways the price point, there's a term for this too. I don't know it right. I can't think of it. But it's where, like, because it's expensive, it's more appealing to rich people. Because all rich people are doing is they're alleviating the status anxiety that comes from their peer group. They're just looking around at other rich people going, that guy's got an $80 million plane. My plane is 2 years old and $70 million. I am not making it. Look what he's got. That's all they do. That's what this is. It's this stupid dick measuring contest. It's absurd. And if you want to, if everybody in the world was taken care of and they were rewarded properly for their work and they had influence over their lives, autonomy, and they had a sense of fulfillment in regards to their humanity and their ability to be bonded and connected to their families and to their loved ones, and they were having orgies by the river, okay? Where the pebbles are easy to stand on, because you don't want an orgy on a sharp pebble beach, or even small. You want big flat rocks, 6 inches minimum. Size matters when it comes to river orgy pebble size. If all of that were in place and people were and also the environment was protected, that's key. People could go acquire as much shit as you want, but also there'd be limitations probably, because I think part of protecting the environment is limiting acquisitions. There's got to be some limits there. We have all kinds of limits on behavior, and like that's what regulations are. But there's one thing we decide, which is tremendously harmful: inequality, and the carbon footprint of wealth, as well as just the overall overdriving system of the global supply chains of capitalism. Somebody posted on Twitter a picture of a peach cup, a sugary little peach cup, and it said, like, produced in Venezuela, canned in Thailand, and they were in America, next to a map with the lines, and it's just like, what the fuck? Second bullet point here. Bezos had been touring mega mansions with girlfriend Lauren Sanchez since last March. The New York Post's Josh, I'm sure she's like about his age, right? She's about his age. Probably just like a retired librarian. They met on Adult Friend Finder. The New York Post's Josh Cosman and Jennifer Gold Keel reported. That was an awkward finish to that one. Here's another one. The Centra billionaire, Amazon CEO, toured and eventually passed on a 26-room Bel Air mansion that later broke sales records when it sold to Rupert Murdoch's son Lachlan for about $150 million in December, the Post reported. Oh, yeah, take that, Lachlan. Take that, L, you motherfucker. I got a bigger house than you. You piece of shit. Rupert Murdoch. So the Fox News guy's son, and I think Lachlan is a big worker. I think he's like the head of one of the heads of. I think Murdoch is the old man. Is they're already created him up in his box of Satan dirt that he's going to spend eternity in. Hopefully, he's a vampire. So the Fox News fuckfaces had all the money. Bezos already owns 2 mansions in Beverly Hills. This is his third. The big one is his third. In addition to a 29,000 square foot Seattle estate, a Texas ranch, and a Washington, D.C. mansion. I looked up the yacht story. There was a yacht story about Bezos recently, thinking that would be part of this. And it turns out that it was not Bezos' yacht. That was some other asshole. So a little more on the estate that he just bought. There's the headline from Curbed Los Angeles. Very violent notion. They're curbing people. Come on. I'm sure that's such a hack. His new Los Angeles fiefdom sprawls for more than 9 acres. Shortly after Geffen bought the estate, that's, I guess, David Geffen, some Hollywood big shot. Sources told the Los Angeles Times that the home had a 50-foot-long bar and flooring, quote, taken from a palace in France on which Napoleon proposed to Josephine, end quote. The property, which the LA Times once counted among the 4 great estates in Los Angeles, was said to include a small golf course, fern gardens, and a wide tree-lined entry. Yeah, that's nice. Again, like I was saying, if everybody was okay and we had a world where we didn't have rampant misery and unfulfilled potential and people wanted to live with luxury, yeah, good. You should. Everybody deserves richness. I was thinking about this. I'm not sure why. This might not make any sense. What else is new? But the concept, and because I probably should hold on to this thought, so maybe I'll just keep it real short. But I was thinking about the concept of richness, being rich. It's kind of just a relative notion that you have more than other people, and that abundance allows you to have access to luxurious living in comfortable spaces and safety, security, gated walls, and gardens and private spaces and nice backyards and safe foods and water, nutritious foods and water, and good health care and responsive. Although a lot of rich people still get fucked in the American healthcare system. By rich, I mean like the several $100,000 a year people, and maybe a few. I mean, they still have to deal with some of the stresses. But the notion of richness is about alleviating stress. There's this competitive, ridiculous, consumption-based, like I was saying earlier, this sort of status anxiety alleviating model where you're just trying to outcompete the neighbors, keeping up with the Josephines. A floor that Napoleon proposed to a woman on. But why not? We talk about alleviating poverty and reducing stress and improving people's lives. And I would argue, and again, I haven't really completely thought this through per se, because it's also kind of vague anyway, but richness for everybody. Everybody should be rich up to a certain threshold, past certain thresholds. We've heard the term or the line of $75,000 is about what it takes to not be completely stressed out all the time and have enough money for a little savings and a little vacation. That's highly dependent on where you live. And you could also set society up so that we don't have these crazy spikes of real estate prices, and because land is a limited resource, although there's still plenty of it out there, but it's controlled by people who own land. The country was founded specifically for landowners only, and those who could steal land. And then you own it if you decide that you've stolen it. If the people who you stole it from don't have the guns or the arrows to come take it back. That's how that worked. Or you bought it from your European buddies. But I think the idea of richness in terms of stress alleviation should be talked about with a little bit more, like the notion. And I mean, you'd probably be right if you said that this guy Hank, he's just out demonizing rich people. And it's not that the rich people are the problem. It's the pain of the people who aren't rich. That's the problem. But the rich people are the problem because they're the ones that control the politicians. They write the rules. Because no country or world would consent to this amount of agony. And I happen to have a very low tolerance for collective pain. I think it should be 0. I know that's naive, but that's an aspirational goal that we should all work towards. And people should have material abundance. Not excessive, not driven by these wild, weird, manipulative marketing campaigns where they play up on human psychology to get you to buy crap you don't need, where capitalism forces problems and then sells you the solutions to those problems imperfectly so that they can keep you on the take. Not that kind of material abundance, but people should have safety and space and green And literally, I mean that. Like gardens, nature, people, the human psyche and nature are wired for each other. The color blue and green, and I guess brown trees. It's not an accident that plants like help, aside from like they actually produce oxygen. And they're cool. They're cool things. People love that shit. We have programs on our monitors that turn the flux, f.lux, and there's other ones that change the color to kind of go along with the way the sun crosses the sky. You get a whiter light during the day, and you get a yellower light in the afternoon, and eventually you get kind of an orange and a red light as you go to bed. And our human ancestors had fire. We had sunsets, and we had fire. So orange is a soothing color as you taper off into the evenings, as the evening tapers into night. But we have a program that simulates that for our brains, and that's okay. It's okay. Those programs are fine. I used one for a while. I turned it off and just forgot to, I don't know, whatever. But what about having the ability to see a sunset, to not have to use a program? And the richness of taking nice vacations and travel, having time to be with people and be connected. You need material improvement to reach the threshold where you're not always working and stressing. And if you connect, and I'm going to go, I think I'm already over 2 hours or whatever. God damn it. I'm always aiming for 45 minutes. If you connect this old woman working, another reason that they've got her working, that it's good that she's working, is that, and that people have to work after 65 years or after whatever age, is that makes a larger labor pool. So people in the labor market are competing with each other, and that pushes the price of labor down, which benefits the capitalists. It benefits the business owners. I worked for shit at my last job. $21.63 for an experienced video editor in Los Angeles. But I knew I was replaceable by someone else who would come in and work for that. I asked for a raise, so it was no. Of course it was a no. Now, there's some shenanigans there to talk about later on. And so, not that changes what I'm saying, but like there's a little bit more context that will be more illuminating later on. But I have to tell that story correctly. But there's a labor market that is encouraged by the string pullers of society, because they want more. The more old people that are willing, the more desperate. This lady, she went to work because she was desperate, because she needed to pay for stuff so she could stay alive in her final years, however many more she's got. And that means that you're competing with more desperate people. The more desperate people you're competing with for work, the easier it is for bosses to replace you. Therefore, you don't have as much leverage in negotiating your rate. The government's not looking out for that. The federal minimum wage is $7.75 an hour, and it was raised from something like that. I think it was $6.55. It was raised by like 90 cents or something. I think it's $7.25 now. But it was raised by whatever, 85, 90, less than $1 like 10 years ago. You don't have a government looking out for you because it's not run by people who care about you. They're paid by the billionaires. They're paid by the ultra wealthy and the idiots that are convinced that there's something called free market capitalism, which is complete bullshit. It's just billionaire propaganda, turning you into a billionaire justice warrior, if we're going to coin a phrase. So the old people working increases the size of the labor pool, which means that it's cheaper for labor for everybody. It benefits the capitalists. And that shit is wrong. It's just wrong. All right. Okay. All right. My God, I can keep repeating myself. Thanks for listening. This has been a pleasure. I miss Michael Brooks. Grateful for all he did in his time with us. And my God, what a shock and a cut it short. Cut a life short way too soon, and that's tragic. And as always, just put stuff in perspective, and hopefully we can learn from that and maybe adjust and make some changes in our own lives, and that'll taper off, and we'll all fall back into our own destructive habits. So that's nice. But sad stuff. But onward we go. We carry his spirit, and we learn and we know that there's a better world, and that's a better world possible, and that there's good people like Michael and everybody he inspired and connected with. So, damn it. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like or subscriber button or whatever. Check out my woodworking thing. I'm really eager for some feedback and for some support on that one. There's a future where this plays out that I hope is where I am a woodworking guy and a podcasting guy, and it all kind of folds. And plus, the woodworking is very much an expression of my principles too. Like, I'm using furniture I find on the street or construction lumber, although I did buy the wood at Home Depot, where I've not gone to Home Depot in a while. It's almost impossible not to use some of these big places. So to the degree that it's possible, I am trying to pull back from those types of things, like Amazon. As much as I fucking hate Bezos, I shop at Amazon for small things, and I'm not anywhere near the financial ability to live by my principles as much as I would like. But the woodworking thing, if it succeeds, I want it to become something. Not that it's going to be about politics at all. That's not the plan. But I do want it to be educational and entertaining, but in a showcase for kind of like documentary-ish sort of cool filmmaking, but also kind of like there's an ethos behind it too, of building, of using your hands, of getting away from a computer, even though I'm filming it and editing it, that's all computer, and of finding the value in the things that are broken in the world and the things that are discarded and cast away, and helping people take more efficient shits and poops, because that's also important. Seriously, man. And you know who's getting the first bum rush? Me, okay? Been pooping with my feet on the floor like a fucking commoner. Like a goddamn modern person. Our ancestors, they didn't have this problem. They just squatted it down there. That's why it all works. The whole system is set up to be squatted. So we gotta, okay. Good night. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. Take care. Be safe. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.